Prynawn da I chi gyd a chroeso I webinar erw ar ddatblygu sgiliau codio yn cyfnod llweddol 2. Good afternoon and welcome to you all to the webinar on developing coding skills at Key Stage 2. We're fortunate to have David Jarman from St Michael's School in Kerry with us this afternoon to go through some of the progression and options of developing coding at Key Stage 2. Before I hand you over to him, I'd just like to highlight the fact that we've got a Microsoft form in the chat area. So if you can click on that and quickly register, then we'll be able to send you links to the recordings and supporting resources directly to your email. They'll also be available in the Microsoft team, the Eru RDLE Microsoft team, if you've joined that, and also the Eru RDLE website, okay? So there'll be an opportunity to share this with staff at your school if necessary. Okay, that's enough from me. I'm now going to hand you over to Dave. Okay, Dave?
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Rob. As Rob just said, my name's David Jarman, Deputy Head Teacher at St Michael's Church and Wales Primary School in Kerry. So before we actually start with the presentation, just a quick overview of our school. Very quickly, we're a voluntary aided Church and Wales school in the village of Kerry near Newtown, Powys. We currently have 89 pupils on roll, with around 19% of those entitled to free school meals. Nearly all pupils come from homes where English is the main language and no pupils speak Welsh as a first language. And also the school has identified around 18% of pupils as having additional learning needs. So the start of our journey. So from experience of working in a pioneer school for science and technology and having freedom to experiment with the new curriculum, we found that coding was a great way to engage children, to make learning fun, to improve standards in the new areas of learning, and also to improve those coding skills. Now in May 2019, in a new school and a new role as Deputy Head Teacher, I worked alongside the digital wizards and we audited the equipment within the school. And we found out that throughout the school, we only had B-bots in the foundation phase and the ability to use J2 code and Scratch using laptops in Key Stage 2. So with the help of Eru, we loaned out the We Do Lego sets, and working closely with the friends of the school, we were actually able to order programmable drones and our own set of We Do Lego in September 2019. Since then, we've been able to increase the hardware within our school through funding and training, and we now have the addition of microbits and more recently Spheros. So I'm now pleased to say that we have a planned progressive approach to using coding devices within the school. At the bottom, you'll see the DCF statements for problem solving and modelling. And then above those, we have the coding devices that we can use to approach those statements in our school. However, I must state that this isn't set in stone. And if programmable devices have an impact on standards or engagement, or more importantly, enjoyment for the learners, then all children can access all coding devices within the school. Another thing worth mentioning is this continuum's continually changing. For example, at the moment, we have a lot of teachers trialing Minecraft coding. We've also got makey kits being ordered for later this year. And fingers crossed, hopefully we'll have Lego Education Spike being a possibility within the school in the next academic year. So why coding? Well, I touched upon it earlier that coding is fun, it engages the learner. However, more importantly, we'd like it to be a major part of our vision here at the school. Coding has strong links to local industry in the area, and in particular agriculture. The new curriculum and the 4 core purposes can be linked, but also really drive coding projects. The 12 pedagogical principles also link very closely with coding projects and lessons, which will be highlighted later in this presentation. And finally, as I said earlier, it raises standards. It creates positive attitudes amongst our learners, but most importantly of all, it really brings enjoyment amongst our learners. So how we deliver coding lessons in Key Stage 2? Well, as I said, pupil voice is a big driver in the provision within our school. Children will always ask to use the coding devices that we have. So we look to hold STEM and STEAM activity days, which I'll show you later in the presentation. We also look for opportunities in the new areas of learning. And before the pandemic, we held a lot of collaboration lessons with other classes where pupils would take the lead in showing other children from other classes how to code. and more recently collaboration with teachers where we're using it as professional development. For example, I'm currently working with a foundation phase teacher in developing a whole school project, a progressive project involving microbits and a strong link to the European Football Championship. So in Upper Key Stage 2, in particular, we've adapted this model which has been developed by myself. It's a 5-stage model which gives meaning to coding and gives opportunities for cross-curricular learning. A model that we are hoping to roll out to all Key Stage 2 classes in the future. The model starts with research and development, and here is a great opportunity to really develop cross-curricular skills and examples. Some examples would be including drawing of maps of flooded areas and the effects of climate change before children can go and then build and program a dam using We Do Lego. Creating reports on how robbers would break into the ancient pyramids to steal treasure before children have the opportunity to build that pyramid and then code an alarm system using microbits, for example. Again, research and development and comparing ancient Roman and Egyptian chariots before coding a Sphero to program those chariots in a STEAM project. The next step of the model is obviously the design and engineering stage. We Do Lego is great for this, but you can also do this, and we do this with our STEM and STEAM projects. Then we always give children the opportunity to build. For example, an Anderson bomb shelter, building the pyramids, building dams, all examples which will be shown later in this presentation. And then we move on to the specific skill of coding, using block coding and basic algorithms for movement, for audio and visual cues. Next, and probably the most important of all, is the recap and evaluate. Looking here to evaluate all the skills within that project, and then hopefully the skills learned in that project could then help with the development of future projects. And in Key Stage 2, we aim for 1 to 2 of those projects per term. So one of the first examples that we looked at was a STEAM day, and this was just done before lockdown, where we looked at different activities linked closely with those pedagogical principles I mentioned earlier, in particular authentic context of learning, and in this case World War II. We wanted children to collaborate in groups. We wanted to promote problem solving with the scenarios here on the right. We wanted them to make connections with other areas of learning like literacy, numeracy and humanities. And these pedagogical principles really did make these days a success. Children using the model mentioned earlier again had to build and program Anderson bomb shelters, a World War II tank and a drone to land on a World War II aircraft carrier. Please take a look at the example here of just children programming a drone. I don't know if you can see, but the drone is programmed to take off the helipad and they're aiming to land it on a little aircraft carrier in the background. The next video I'm going to show you just demonstrates the coding that's taking place in the bottom here. It's of a microbit being programmed using block coding to add visual, audio and light outputs on an Anderson bomb shelter in the Blitz. Okay, so the next example I'm going to show is the Sphero chariots. Now, this was another one of our STEAM projects. The extra challenge here was that the children had to block code using angles for the Sphero to move in a straight line. They also had to take into account the speed that they wanted to program the Sphero and the time they were going to program the Sphero to ensure that it crossed the finishing line, as we then held a chariot race in the hall. Now, before I pass over to one of my Year 5 pupils to explain exactly what she did, I just want to show you a quick video of the process put together by some of our digital wizards within the school. And now one of my Year 5 pupils just explaining the 5-step model that I mentioned earlier, but in her own words.
First thing we had to do was research, draw and label Roman and Egyptian chariots. Then we designed our own chariot using the equipment in class. Every group had the same equipment. Then we had to test if the pharaoh could move the chariot. Then we went into the hall, programmed the pharaoh to move in a straight line, finding out the angle, how times moved quick. We wanted the pharaoh to move across the finish line. Here is an example of the code we use.
Okay, so another way that we develop coding in our school is the focus weeks. Now, the idea of our focus weeks is that we have a break from our usual topic and we hold a mini topic within a big topic. We aim to look at relevant topics at that time, and we really want the 4 core purposes to really drive this. This example is looking at ambitious and capable learners, where we looked at a lot of statements like children setting themselves high standards. We wanted them to seek and enjoy challenge. We wanted them to continue to question and enjoy problem solving. And we wanted them to communicate effectively. The example that we looked at was Japan, because obviously in September 2019 we had the Rugby World Cup. Using the model that I mentioned again earlier, children researched tourist attractions and then developed persuasive leaflets to visit Japan, and in particular they took a big interest with the Ryogoku Sumo Hall. So from a bit of research, we then looked to program and engineer and build sumo wrestlers to combat in a mini tournament within the class. Now, this was quite a detailed process as we had to use 2 of the We Do Lego packs. It had a combination of motors, elastic bands, cogs. But again, I would like to show you this short video because it really demonstrates the learning that took place and the enjoyment that we had in that particular week. Okay, so moving on to our second focus week. So our second focus week looked at So our second focus week focused on enterprising creative contributors. Again, we really wanted to have that as the drive, and we were looking at things like connecting and applying their knowledge to create products. We wanted children to think creatively and reframe and overcome and solve problems, take measured risks and work collaboratively, and to play different roles in teams. So I'm just going to show you two quick videos. Here is just an example where the children, again using that model, built a pyramid and a sphinx and programmed a microbit alarm system to stop people going into their pyramid to steal treasures. And then just down here we've got an example of a Lego pulley system whereby children had to research the forces that were in action, but then actually program the Lego pulley system to move over a meter to help speed up the process of pyramid building. Now, to give you a rest from my voice, I'm going to pass over to one of my Year 6 pupils, who again will just explain in their own words and to hear that 5-stage model and how it works effectively. Okay, here you go.
For the pulley, we had to explain what forces worked when the Egyptians pulled the stone for the pyramids. Then we had to build the pulley system from Lego. The coding was quite challenging. We had to block code, but then test the time. We coded because we wanted the robot to move over 1 meter.
And then again, this is my Year 6 pupil just explaining the microbit programming that took place.
For our microbit pyramid alarms, we had to measure angles and equilateral triangles, then make 3D models of pyramids, then code the microbits. Here is my coding. So I coded it to say get out or die, and then put some music on, and then a skull face.
Okay, another way that we look to develop coding here within Key Stage 2 and across the school is to encourage collaboration. And we did a lot of this before lockdown, and it's a pedagogical principle that we feel quite strongly about, and something again that we want to tie into our vision for the school. I'm going to pass over again, just to give you a break from my voice, one of my digital wizards, just showing you how we collaborated with Class 3 once the We Do Lego kits had arrived.
Showing how to program one of the Lego rovers. We used block coding and changed the time that the Lego moved for. Here is a video showing its work.
So the other photos that you see on this PowerPoint slide are actually a collaboration project with Class 1. Children in reception in Year 1 coded a B-bot on a Christmas story map in literacy, and they wanted to show children in Year 5 and 6 what they did. This was really helpful because what we want to do is to give Year 5 and 6 ideas how they could plan B-bot lessons for younger children in the future. But what was really important and very interesting here is that it showed that collaboration doesn't always have to be older children to younger children, and that the younger children to older children can be equally effective. Because some of my Year 6 children hadn't seen a B-bot for over 5 years, so it was a very interesting activity to be part of. So, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking also to raise standards, and here's just some of the examples how coding has fed into raising standards. We've got some examples here on scientific reports on whales before we moved on to doing microbit alarm systems for those whales. We've got the write-up of the chariot report there and a clear explanation in a scientific report. We've got a recount and a diary entry on Howard Carter finding Tutankhamun. Before looking at alarm systems and messages to stop people entering the tomb. Some other examples of how it's affected our standards in other areas of learning is focusing on our numeracy. Here's some examples. Some examples here include a square number investigation, where we used cubes to build levels of a pyramid before, again, we looked at the coding element and then linked a scaled build on Minecraft. We've got examples here of area and perimeter on the Anderson bomb shelter activity. Just here, we've got showing you the angle of code where children had to overcome that challenge to make sure they knew what angle they were programming the Sphero to move. We've got some data handling examples where children researched climate change before they moved on to programming a Lego dam. We've got, when we're looking at programming the drones, there's an activity here where children measured and made 3D nets for helipads. As I mentioned earlier, we've got a scaled design there using just Lego, where children created a scaled aircraft carrier where they were trying to program the drone to land on. And then you can see these various triangles where children have used speed, distance and time to work out how quickly those We Do Lego tanks were moving. And then very finally, one of the probably the most enjoyable activities that the children have had in the last couple of years was a data handling activity looking at mean, median and mode, where children programmed their drones to fly across the hall and we timed them. And that was a really fun and exciting project. Again, just links here with other areas of learning, for example, humanities. You can see the right up there on the blitz, the top left-hand side. But again, we've got, like I've mentioned before, research on pyramids. We've got a scale drawing of Tutankhamun's tomb, the researching of climate change, and this map work here showing what areas of Britain have been flooded because of climate change. And then how that linked really lovely into this video that I'm going to show you here, where they've designed, built and programmed a dam. And I'm not too sure if you can hear, but the children have added audio in that to give it a real life, authentic context. So just going again into the new curriculum moving forward, we feel that the freedom that the new curriculum will give us and the 4 core purposes being the heart of that education will allow us to continue to drive STEM projects and STEAM projects and one-off lessons for coding. These 2 examples here just show 2 of the 4 core purposes that have really helped to drive some projects so far in our journey. And then on the right, again, the pedagogical principles. Again, we try and tie in so many of our lessons now with as many of these as we can, because we can see that it develops happy, enthusiastic learning and ultimately raises standards. This slide is just always lovely to hear off the children, and I think it's a really important one because coding, it doesn't just suit one style of learner. You know, it suits your auditory, your visual, your kinesthetic learners, and it also really appeals to both boys and girls. And some of the examples here are lovely to hear. We've got a year 6 boy who says he likes using devices because you can get creative and do your own thing. We've then got some of the year 5 girls here saying that they like the Spheros because I got to design my chariot with a partner. She liked racing them because you could see who's the fastest and to improve my chariot. Here, another girl, I like coding because it's fun to try something new in each project, a year 5 girl. You can create code and design in one lesson. My favorite was using the microbits. And then the last one here, I like that you can make things move with coding, like the Lego dam. So we're always continually critiquing ourselves within the school to move forward. And one of the ways we want to do that is link with industry. Now, we're very lucky that we've got an RM group company in Newtown that uses robotics. And we've actually agreed with them, when it's safe to do so, that they're actually going to bring some of the smaller robotics into the classroom and show our children how coding and how robotics are used in industry, which I think will be a real worthwhile experience. We want to continue to take part in the competitions and annual events. We really want to continue strengthening links with parents and the local community and showing how we feel and why we feel so passionate about coding. And then at the bottom there, one of the probably the most important things is we want to continue to strengthen collaboration within the school, something that's going to be even more important now due to the pandemic. But we also really want to strengthen collaboration with other schools in the cluster and the wider sort of country. And we also then want to strengthen collaboration with high schools. So there is a nice transition project going into high school. So that's all from me. I'd just like to say diolch yn fawr. Thank you for listening. If there are any questions that people would like to ask, you're more than welcome to ask me now, or alternatively, you can follow us on our Twitter page, or you can email me at jarmand17@hubecymru.net. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic, Dave. Thank you very much for highlighting some of the projects that you have in school. You know, you can see the engagement levels is pretty clear from the pictures and the images, and also the videos that you've shown, and giving it a real life purpose there has got a great impact from the coding kind of progression and the coding development that you've achieved at your school. So thank you very much for that.
No, thank you.
Time that we've just gone over a few minutes, so apologies for that, but as I said, the recording will be available through the team and also the ERU website, and this presentation will be shared with you as well. Okay, so thank you very much for attending today's webinar. Thanks once again, David, for that, and this webinar will now come to a close. Diolch I chi gyd.